Today I'm going to be walking you through our guide for improving FPS and input delay for Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 4. But before we get started, make sure to join our Discord community where you can find PC part picker lists, many other tweaks, and even channels with hundreds of active users ready to help you with any PC issues or questions you may have. Also, check out our website where you can find our free Performance V4 software as well as our other paid services which can improve performance for any game. So to get started, we're going to start with Windows settings. Some of these settings are going to be quality of life settings, and some of these settings are going to improve performance. I'm going to be going through all these settings one by one, and whether you're on Windows 10 or Windows 11, the settings are going to be the same. Software just looks a little bit different. So where we're going to start is the System tab, and we're going to start with notifications. You can turn off notifications. You can leave these on if you'd like, but leaving on notifications can sometimes result in a pop-up from an application that can possibly tab you out of your game and interrupt a competition or whatever you're playing with notification pop-up. And so for almost everybody, unless you need these for any specific reason, we recommend just turning them off. Then next you can head to the storage section. You're going to want to turn off Storage Sense. Storage Sense is going to actively monitor your available space on your disk, and so it's going to constantly be watching the files that you download and the files that are created, which can be a problem when games are creating constant temporary files. Now this isn't going to make the biggest performance difference unless you're on something like a hard drive. If you're on an SSD, this isn't going to make the biggest performance difference, and if you're on a laptop or you are limited on space, we would actually recommend that you keep this on. But for most people, when you're trying to get the most performance out of your system, you want all of these background processes off, and so in this case I'm going to recommend that you turn off Storage Sense. Next you're going to want to head to your personalization tab. The background image doesn't matter so much. This doesn't affect performance a lot, so you can set this to whatever you want, but usually you want to make sure that you're not using anything dynamic. So we're talking about things like rain meter, or there are some other applications that can cause dynamic desktops which can change the background of your screen and be like an animated video. Now those can be cool looking, but a lot of the time there is quite a few background processes to monitor whether or not games are open, what's running, and even though it does turn off the dynamic display when you're in a game, that doesn't mean that the processes for that software aren't running in the background. And so we would recommend that you turn off any dynamic backgrounds and any shifting backgrounds. So you'd want a constant photo or a solid color. And then you can head over to the Colors tab. You're going to want to choose Dark Mode. Dark Mode isn't going to make a massive performance difference again. It's usually quality of life, but Dark Mode can reduce some GPU driver overhead, and so we just recommend that you turn this to Dark Mode, but this is more of personal preference. But one that is not going to be more personal preference, this is going to actually be performance affecting, is transparency effects. You're going to want to turn those off. Certain applications that you're going to have open on other monitors while you're playing, if any, are going to be using transparency effects to have a transparent window, and while it can make Windows look nicer, it does increase a lot of GPU overhead. Your driver has to do a lot of rendering to understand what's going on behind the application and what's going on in front of the application. So we recommend that you turn off transparency effects. Then next, you're going to want to head to the gaming section. What you're going to want to start with here is your game bar. You're going to want to turn off allow your controller to open game bar, and later on you'll even have the option to remove game bar if you want. Game bar is going to constantly run on top of your screen as an overlay whether you have it or not. It is always going to be running whenever you have a game open, and so game bar is going to eat up quite a few processes but also interrupt the driver flow of how your game is rendering. So we recommend that you turn off game bar. And then the same thing applies for game mode, and then as well as going into the graphics settings, changing your default graphics settings, and turning off hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. For some games on some setups, this can improve performance. On most games with most setups, it's not going to improve performance, and you can try with this on or off, but most of the time most of you are going to want to just turn this off. And variable refresh rate, don't need this, you can turn that off. There's no benefit unless of course you're getting screen tearing. If you're getting screen tearing, then having variable refresh rate on can be beneficial, but you'd want to aim more for something like FreeSync or G-Sync. So now we can head over to the privacy and security section. All of these settings in the app permissions and privacy sections are mostly useless and are going to increase some of your background processes and then increase some overhead that your CPU has to do in order for the Windows operating system to run even while you're playing video games. So for most of these, you're just going to want to turn these off. You're not going to want to send these telemetry data to Microsoft, and you don't need any of these features. If you need these features, you can go ahead and leave whichever ones you need on, but most of you are not going to need any of these. So you can just go through all of these settings and turn them off. Now, the ones that you're going to want to keep on are your camera, microphone, and voice activation doesn't matter so much, but in Windows 11, there's no real reason to turn it off. Windows 10, it's easier to turn off separately from your microphone, but again, no real reason to turn it off. If you turn off your camera, microphone, and voice activation, what can happen is when you go into an app like Discord or any other application such as OBS, and you try to use your camera or your microphone, it won't have the permissions to do it, and your camera and or microphone won't work at all. So you're going to want to make sure that you leave these on. This is very important. But the rest of these, such as notifications and all the rest of these settings, you can turn off safely with limited to no detriment to any applications that you're going to be running on your computer. And the rest of these past the other devices, you can turn off app diagnostics, but most of the rest of the settings aren't going to be a massive difference. You can turn off automatic file downloads if they're on, but all of these are just going to be file access for the applications that you're running, usually just the Microsoft Store. So you can just go ahead and leave those alone, and that's not going to make any difference. So now that we're done with our Windows settings, what you're going to want to head off to is going into our applications and turning off hardware acceleration. Hardware acceleration on recent builds of Windows isn't going to be detrimental in any significant way. However, on some older versions of Windows 10, having hardware acceleration on could affect how your graphics driver would understand different displays at different refresh rates. So if you have a secondary display and it's running at 60 Hertz, and you have your main display and it's running at 144 Hertz, and you have a hardware accelerated application running on a second monitor, that could cause your main monitor to drop to 60 Hertz. And that was just a way that the Windows kernel interacted with the drivers at the time. Most of those issues have been fixed, but there's no real benefit to having hardware acceleration on in these applications when you're playing. And so for most of you, just to be safe, it's better if you turn those off. So I'm going to be walking through how to do that on Microsoft Edge, Opera, Chrome, and Spotify. First, we'll start with Microsoft Edge. You're just going to go to the three dots in the very top right, go down to Settings, go to System Performance on the left, go to the System tab, and then turn off all of these. You don't need any of these. You can turn off, continue running in the background. This is pretty important. Use graphics acceleration when available. Turn all those off, and then you can close your browser. Next, we'll go to Opera. So very similar. You go to the top right to the little config menu here, to your little setting cogwheel here. You can scroll all the way down, hit the advanced tab, and scroll all the way down, and you'll see use graphics acceleration when available. You can just turn that off, hit relaunch, and then you can close the browser. And then for Google Chrome, again, same thing, three dots, settings, system, and then continue running, turn this off, use graphic acceleration. I don't like to see notifications, so I turn those off as well, and hit relaunch. Then lastly is going to be Spotify. So in Spotify, you can hit these three dots, go to Edit, Preferences, scroll all the way down, and turn off hardware acceleration, and then you can go ahead and close Spotify. There is this setting in Discord as well. There are a couple of Discord settings that I recommend you change. So the first one is going to be going into settings, scrolling down to game overlay, and turning off the game overlay as well as the legacy overlay, and going to the advanced tab and turning off hardware acceleration. Both of those settings are going to improve, like I said, the performance on certain Windows builds when Discord is running on a second monitor. And the game overlay is the similar reason as the game bar in Windows. That is an overlay that will be running on top of your game, which adds some overhead to what your computer has to process when rendering your display. And once you have those turned off, you're good to go as far as hardware acceleration is concerned. So then the next step, what we're going to want to head to next is display driver uninstaller. So even if you have been updating your NVIDIA drivers, or you have kept an NVIDIA driver that is known to be stable, there is almost always a benefit for every single client we have ever had to reinstall the graphics driver. And so I'm going to be walking you through how to do that today. The link for display driver uninstaller, you're going to be able to find in the description. And once you go to that link, you're just going to want to hit the download mirror for USA or EU. In my case, USA, and wait for this to finish downloading. Once this is downloaded, then we can open up that file location. You can open up the zip folder that's in there, and there's going to be this application. You can go ahead and drag this application to your desktop and just double click that. When you double click that, it's going to open up a self-extracting archive. You can hit extract, and then it will extract into a folder. Once you have that folder, you can open up that folder, open up display driver uninstaller. You can hit no if there's any updates, hit OK on the pop-ups. On the options pop-up, we recommend that you check the remove PhysX option and uncheck the remove NVIDIA app and remove NVIDIA broadcast checkbox, and then hit close. OK on the final pop-up. Select your device type, which is going to be GPU, and your GPU driver. So you can find your GPU by going to your taskbar, right-clicking, going to Task Manager, going to the Performance tab, and then going down to GPU. There might be a couple of GPUs here. If there is more than one, that's okay. You can go to, if you know which one's your discrete graphics card, and in this case, my NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4090, then you're just going to want to go with this brand. But if you have multiple GPUs shown here, so sometimes Intel integrated graphics as well as NVIDIA, just try to find which one is your discrete graphics card. And if you can't figure it out, you can of course run display driver uninstaller on all three of them, one after the other. But in my case, I only have the NVIDIA card, so I'm going to choose GPU, NVIDIA, and then I'm going to choose clean and do not restart. You can choose clean and restart, and this will restart you into your operating system after it's done cleaning. The reason for that is because if you choose clean and do not restart, sometimes it can result in a black screen. In all of the cases I've seen, it never results in a black screen, but for some people it does. And so you can do clean and restart if you want to be safe, but otherwise in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you using clean and do not restart. So just go ahead and click that, and it's going to take its time. It's going to remove your graphics driver completely. Now, when this happens, it is totally normal for any other monitor other than your main monitor to turn off. And even sometimes if your main monitor turns off, one of your monitors will be on. That's totally normal. All right, now that the clean uninstall is completed, just go ahead and hit yes on this pop-up to exit now. And if you need to run the application a couple more times, go ahead and do that. So once you've done that, then we can go ahead and get the latest driver. So now you're going to want to head to the other link in the description for NVCleanstall and download any of the servers. Doesn't really matter. You can choose whichever one's closest to you, but I just choose the top left one every time. And then once you have that, go ahead and drag that to your desktop and run the NVCleanstall. So in the NVCleanstall, if you know a specific driver version you want, go ahead and click the manual select a driver version, and you can select any version you want. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to leave it on install the best driver for my hardware, and anyone watching can do that as well. Especially as this video ages, it's probably in your best interest to just choose the install best driver for my hardware. So then go ahead and hit next. If you need any of these other options selected, you should know that you need them, and you can select any one of them. This is going to install a completely stripped version of the NVIDIA driver, and then you can install the NVIDIA app later. So I just recommend leaving it on the display driver only and hitting next. This is going to download the driver, extract the driver, and get the driver ready for installation. And then there's going to be a few options that we're going to select once this is done. All right, now that that's done, go ahead and check the disable installer telemetry and advertising, the unattended express installation, perform a clean installation, and then I would suggest that you check the box for show expert tweaks, click the enable message signal interrupts, and then set the interrupt priority to high. And then once you've done that, go ahead and hit next, and then go ahead and hit install. Sorry, I have to cut off the video when the NVIDIA driver is installing or display driver uninstaller is running, because it will kill the driver and then break my recording. So that's why I can't show you the actual install procedure, but it should show you installation completed once it has finished installing. And once that's done, you can go ahead and close this. So at this point, your second monitors should be back on, but they might be in the wrong order like mine are. So I'm going to walk you through how to fix that. So you can just right click your display anywhere on your display where there isn't an icon. Just right click, hit display settings, and then you'll be able to see all of your monitors in their current layout. So the way to reorganize them, know where they're supposed to go, hit your identify button, and you'll be able to see a number on the bottom left. So in this case, 1 is in the middle for me, 2 is on the left, 4 is on the right, and 3 is on the top. So this is how I'm going to do it. Hit apply, and then our monitors should be organized correctly. Once you've done that, we're ready to move on to the next step. So the next step is going to be the Performance V4 software. This is our free software for improving FPS, input delay. This works for all games, not just Fortnite, but today, like the video title, we're going to be focusing on Fortnite. So to get this application, you need to head to our website, ParagonTweaks.net/resources, and find the Performance V4 software and hit download here. The link will also be in the description. So once you go ahead and download that, then you can just open up the file location and drag this to your desktop, and then you can just right click it and click run as administrator. Make sure that you run as administrator. If you don't run the application as administrator, then it will not run properly. It should force you to run as administrator by default, but if it doesn't, again, just right click and run as administrator. Otherwise, you're going to see a bunch of error messages. And we have a whole walkthrough for this application, but today I'm just going to be going through it once again. And if you don't want to download it from our website, you can also get it from the Microsoft Store. So if you just open up the Microsoft Store, search up Performance V4 and select the utility, choose Get, and this will download the Performance V4 software, get it ready to install. This has already been virus checked by Microsoft, obviously, for it to be in their Microsoft store. You can run the application through any virus detection software you would like. The application is 100% safe, and Microsoft has approved it for their use. Once it has downloaded, you can go ahead and hit open. It works the exact same as if you get it from over here. So once the Performance V4 application is launched, you'll be able to see the title, launch button, and all of us. If you're interested in visiting any of our Twitters, you can go ahead and just click any of these links. It will open the Twitter up. But for the application, just go ahead and hit the launch button, and it's going to get prepared to have tweaks ran on your system. And then once that's done, what we're going to want to start with is the system preparation tab. You're going to want to make sure that you create a system restore point. That way, if anything is unstable due to, there's instability on your system and the Performance V4 application maybe exacerbates that, you're just going to want to have a system restore point so that you're ready to go back to the restore point, so that all of these changes are completely undone back to the way that your system was prior to running this, so that everything is safe and ready to go. So just go ahead and hit the start button on that, and it's going to create the restore point. And then you can go ahead and start the Windows safety checks. So this is going to be a corruption check, make sure that your files aren't corrupted. So just go ahead and start on that, and it's going to run through its safety checks. Same for the stability and compatibility, the install C++ redistributables. You just want to hit start on that. It's going to install the redistributables for you. So just go ahead and wait for this to complete. And then once that's done, you can head on over to the tweaks tab. So this is where all of the performance affecting tweaks are going to be. Some of these are going to be more beneficial for some people than others. And so you can try with these toggles on or off and see which combination works best for you. I would recommend you probably try them one at a time, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to turn them all on. So we're going to start with the custom power plan. This is going to load our power plan. So you can see that the access is denied there. That is an example error of if you did not run this as administrator. So if you see that, you can go ahead and close it and just make sure to run this program as administrator. And then we're just going to go through the same launch sequence again. If you were not run as administrator and the custom power plan failed, you're going to want to make sure that you do the system restore point again, because that also means that did not work. So go ahead and hit start on the restore point. It will create it again for the safety checks, and my C++ redistributables did install like they were expected. If yours did not, you can start that again as well. And then you can head over to the tweak section, and then if for some reason the toggle stays on, you can go ahead and just turn that off. And then go back to the custom power plan, turn that on. It'll say the operation completed successfully, and that's what it should look like if you had properly ran it as administrator. If that shows up, you're good to go, and you'll have your custom power plan. The way you can check that is by searching for choose a power plan, and you'll see our Paragon Performance V4 power plan. This is going to be the most performance you can get. Now, as a warning, if you are on a laptop and not a desktop computer, you're probably going to want to try the Performance V4 power plan, but if you start to get stutters or your FPS drops after a couple of minutes of playing due to temperatures, switch back to the balanced power plan. For some systems, that's going to be better if you don't have top-of-the-line cooling. And then for the rest of these, the same rules apply. You may get some errors sometimes, but as long as it's not always access is denied, then you're good. An error every once in a while just likely means that your system didn't have the registry key we're trying to change. So don't worry about it. One error out of 100 is nothing to worry about. That's completely normal. So just go ahead and wait for all of these to complete as you're turning them on, and we'll get back to it when it's done. All right, and once all of that's done, then you're going to want to head to the system cleanup tab. So the system cleanup tab, this is going to help you, clean up your disk, clean up temporary files, clean up devices left over from, if you have plugged in a mouse before that you don't use anymore, that is still stored on your system. Your system keeps a record of that mouse being plugged in at one point, and so we go ahead and clear that out just to clear up any temporary files and, extra things that you don't need. So go ahead and hit the start on the Ghost device sanitization. And then it will tell you how many devices, remove 198 in this case. Start the disk cleanup. Now the disk cleanup and some of these steps in the cleanup tab, as well as the preparation tab, can take quite a bit of time. It's totally normal. And if they get stuck and you notice that nothing has changed for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, then you can go ahead and close the application, open it up again, and start back where you left off. All right, and now once that's done, then you can go to the transient files removal. This is going to remove a bunch of temp files. None of these files you'll need. These are files left over from applications that ran. These are no longer necessary, and it won't delete any that are necessary or are in use at the moment. So don't worry about this. This is just going to clean up extra files. And then once that's done, you can head on over to the next steps tab. and there's going to be a link to our website, as well as the link to the Discord that I was talking about earlier. Like I said, this is going to have PC help channels for any PC issues you may have now or even may have in the future. Hundreds of people are ready to respond at any given time, including the Paragon employees. And then there's other tweaks in there for you to check out, other files, and some other helpful tips and tricks, as well as our latest announcements for any new videos or any new tips and tricks that we're going to release. So make sure to join that Discord and pay attention. And once you're done with the Performance V4 software, we can go ahead and close that. And the last thing left is going to be our brand new Fortnite settings application. This application includes some of the settings changes from Chapter 6 Season 4 and is actually the only application that properly modifies Fortnite settings and has recommended settings from the Paragon group for the latest season of Fortnite. So you're going to want to run this one as administrator. Again, this should automatically do that, but if it doesn't, just go ahead and right click run as administrator. And here you're going to be able to change any of the settings that you have. So this can be ran whether or not you have Fortnite installed, and this will adjust the settings even if Fortnite has not been ran yet and set them up properly for the next time that you launch the application. So even if you haven't played Fortnite or it's still downloading, still go ahead and run this application to make sure that it's ready to go when it's done downloading. In this, there's a ton of options. There is your rendering mode options. So we have DirectX 12, performance mode, DirectX 11, and legacy performance mode, your resolution, FPS, audio quality, and the reflex low latency. This will also direct you to the location of your Fortnite install. And you can disable your full screen optimizations here in the application, and then you have additional settings, which these are some of our recommended settings. This is just going to set some of these quality options. You can uncheck any of these if you want them to not apply, but for 99.9% of you, you're going to want to just leave that additional settings category alone. After every update, you can run the clear cache. This is going to clear some of the Fortnite game cache. This is not the same as clearing your shader cache, and so this can sometimes help out input delay and stutters in a new season. So you can go ahead and clear that cache whenever you want to, but just pay attention to the fact that it can possibly cause some stutters immediately after clearing cache for the first couple of games. So use this, with caution. And then for most of you, like I said, you're just going to want to hit the recommended settings. This is going to apply the Paragon recommended settings and set your game up for the optimal performance even before having to play the game at all. This is going to be ready to go as soon as you launch your game, you're ready to play. That's going to set your rendering mode, your reflex low latency, your audio quality, all of the additional settings, and it's not going to touch your resolution or your FPS. So these you can set yourself. You can set your resolution to whatever resolution you prefer. In my case, my monitor resolution, which is 1440p. And then I have 180 hertz. So I'm going to set this to 180 FPS cap, hit apply, okay, and then you're good to go. So you can go ahead and close the application and you're ready to play Fortnite. So the last thing that I'm going to mention in this video prior to you starting to play is going to be to go to your Epic Games launcher, go to the library on the left, go to the three dots on Fortnite, go to options, and make sure that you have high resolution textures unchecked and pre-download streamed assets checked. This is going to make sure that all of the assets that would sometimes be downloaded live as you're playing, such as skins, pickaxes, things like that, are already completely downloaded and ready to go when you launch your game, so that there's no networking or processing power spent on downloading those assets when you load into the game. So just turn on pre-downloaded streamed assets, turn off high resolution textures, hit apply. This may take a while depending on your internet speed, so just go ahead and let it take its time. And then while we're waiting for that, we can go to the NVIDIA control panel and change some of those settings because we reinstalled your NVIDIA driver. So go ahead and right click on your desktop, go to show more options, go to NVIDIA control panel, agree and continue on the software license agreement, and then we'll start at the very first tab, which is the adjust image settings with preview. For most of you, the easiest thing to do here is going to choose the use my preference emphasizing, set this all the way to performance, hit apply, wait for the pop-up if there is a pop-up, and then once that's done, you can go to use the advanced 3D image settings. You're going to want to check this, hit apply, and then you can click the take me there button. This is going to take you to the Manage 3D Settings tab, and then the most important settings, really the only settings that you're going to want to touch in here after changing that, is going to be your power management mode. So instead of being power management mode of normal, choose prefer maximum performance, prefer refresh rate. You usually want to set this to highest available, and then the rest of these settings you can mostly leave alone. The only other one that you might want to mess around with is your low latency mode. This is mostly going to be set in Fortnite, but if you want to set it globally for all games, you can set this to on or ultra. We recommend trying on first, and then you can also try ultra. That depends on the setup. And for your monitor technology, we're going to recommend that you set this to fixed refresh. You can choose G-Sync compatible G-Sync or FreeSync. However, turning that on is going to reduce your total number of tears, so screen tearing. It should effectively get rid of horizontal screen tearing when setting G-Sync on, which modularly sets your refresh rate, but it's not without consequences. So it does come with an input delay overhead. It does cause some more processing, which can increase the amount of time it takes for your GPU to send the frame to your monitor. And so this can cause some added input delay while having the benefit of getting rid of screen tearing. So if you have horrible screen tearing, you're going to want to have G-Sync on because it is possibly one of the only options for you to fix it. However, if you don't have screen tearing because your FPS accurately matches your refresh rate, then you want to have your monitor's technology at fixed refresh for the optimal performance. So then just go ahead and hit apply, and then there will be a pop-up. Nope, not in this case. So then you're good on the manage 3D settings. You can go to the change resolution tab on the left, and then you can set your resolution as well as your refresh rate. You're going to want to set your refresh rate to the highest option there is. And then if you'd like, for some monitors, this may look a little bit better. If you choose the NVIDIA color settings, set your output dynamic range to full instead of limited, and hit apply. And then if there's a pop-up after hitting apply, then you're going to want to hit yes. In this case, there is none, so you can head over to the adjust desktop size and position. For the scaling, you can leave this alone. If you're not playing a stretch resolution, some people like setting this to no scaling, even though they're not using a scaled resolution. If you're playing at a native resolution, so 1440p, you don't have to have none of these matter. You don't have to have it set to no scaling. But if you are going to be using something such as display scaling using custom resolution utility, then set this to no scaling prior to doing that. Besides that, as long as you're playing native, none of these settings apply. And if you're choosing a custom resolution in the change resolution tab, then you're either going to want to leave this at aspect ratio or full screen. Head over to the setup G-Sync section. We changed this in the manage 3D settings, but just in case it's not already off, go ahead and turn off the checkbox here. And then you can move to adjust video color settings. Again, this is going to look better on some monitors and not on others, but I usually recommend to choose with the NVIDIA settings, go to the advanced tab and set dynamic range to full and hit apply. Then you can hit yes in the pop-up and you can close your NVIDIA control panel. Now, assuming that your Fortnite is done downloading, you should be ready to play, good to go, and your performance should be significantly improved. Now, before you actually start playing, what I will recommend is that you look at your processes before restarting and after restarting. Right now, my processes are 182. And right now I'm going to restart my computer and we'll see what the processes are after doing all of these tweaks before we get playing. So I'll be right back. One last thing that you're going to want to check, which I had forgot to mention before restarting, is going to be to check your startup apps. So in your startup apps, most of these are just going to be on by default, and you're only going to want the ones that are necessary to be turned on. So in this case, we don't need Copilot. In most cases, you don't need Epic Games Launcher, but if you want to have it launched on startup because you're just going to be playing Fortnite as soon as you turn on your computer, then go ahead and leave that on. Mobile devices, not necessary. Your browser, not necessary. If you don't recognize the applications, you can turn them off most of the time safely. Turn off the security health system tray. I don't care for the tray icon. Spotify, I don't want to start up. Discord, Xbox, all of these things you can turn off, and then go ahead and restart your computer, and then we'll be able to see your total number of startup applications. All right, now that we're back up, you can go ahead and open up your task manager, go to the performance tab, CPU, and you'll see that our processes dropped from 180 down to only 87 processes. So now this is going to be a massive improvement to your input delay and your FPS. And so go ahead and start playing and let us know in the comments how your performance has improved, and let everyone else in the comments know whether or not this was beneficial for you. And if you have any other helpful tips and tricks for people, please leave them down below and let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.